U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and China's foreign minister met in Malta over the weekend to discuss the possibility of a meeting between China's President Xi and President Biden. Joining us right now to talk China, Peter Alexander, founder of Zeben Advisors. Good morning to you, Peter. I can't figure out sort of where these discussions are supposed to lead at a time when it seems politically, at least in this country, and I'm curious what you think is happening in China as well, that there is no real political appetite for greater cooperation.
No, absolutely. And might I add, greetings from Shanghai. Look, first of all, discussions are good, no matter what level they may be at, especially over the course of the past year. But I think it's very fair to say that right now, the only bipartisan issue that both sides of the aisle are agreeing on is that China right now is to be contained. And the Chinese are pretty much well aware of that. And as things move forward, it's going to continue to be a contentious issue, especially given that we're heading into a hotly contested, shall we say, 2024 presidential election.
But when you think of the current risks out there, is the risk to American or multinational businesses doing business in China, is the risk the way the Chinese government is going to approach this? Or frankly, you talk to a lot of American businesses that are doing business in China, they worry more about the pressure they're going to be receiving from U.S. lawmakers.
Oh, I think it's clearly coming from the U.S. lawmakers and the likes of Mike Gallagher, representative from Wisconsin in the Select Committee. And, you know, there was comments made just last week where, you know, there were organizations that wanted to speak, and Representative Gallagher made it a point to say, oh, they only wanted to speak anonymously. And given the fact of how the Select Committee has been structured, there's no question why they would want to speak in such a way. But from the risks related to on the ground in China, the advice that we've been given to all of our clients is twofold. Number one, the risks are not materially any different than they've been in the last 2, even 3 decades.
2 or 3 decades?
Honestly, well, 2 to 3 decades, yeah. I mean, ever since WTO, right? At least
you think there's no more risk today than there was before?
I didn't say no more. I just said materially not as much. And that essentially the likes of, and I've heard you on TV before talking about, like, what advice would you give to, you know, Nike and Starbucks and the like? Just keep doing the business that is the business. That's what got you to where you have succeeded in China. And I do believe that there should be pushback because we're talking about the first and the second largest economies in the world that are, quite frankly, different. You know, there's no nuance. It's just that we're talking very different markets with very different you know, rules of engagement, shall we say, in terms of the local operating environment.
I think the bigger question, though, is these multinational businesses are by default trying to diversify away from China in relation to supply chains, as we know, as it relates to chips when it comes to Taiwan. Part of that's a national security issue. Part of it's a business issue. But the question is, the more they do that, how does that change the relationship with China?
Well, again, I mean, it really comes down to exactly what is happening in terms of the divestment. You know, there's a lot of conversation about moving to India these days. 5 years ago, it was all about moving to Vietnam. Is that actually taking place? Or how much of the reshoring back to the United States is underway? You know, we had Foxconn in Wisconsin. Big deal was made of that. Never really came of anything. There are now struggles in Arizona with TSMC. And I think that there's a drastic, unfortunate underestimation of just how strong China has built its ability to manufacture within the mainland. And these organizations are just having to figure out how to navigate within what I think is existing currently, and to a certain extent on the margins, look to elsewhere to where they can, you know, expand or move.